Alright, what up YouTube? Welcome to Knife Hit, and let's go through the best knives to use in the game. Now what we're going to be looking at here is, we're going to be looking at the tip of the blade. We want it to be exactly in the middle. We're going to be looking at the hilt of the knife, of the handle. We want that to kind of stick out more, and we definitely want the size of the blade to be a reasonable size. So let's go through some of the best knives we can use in the game to make it easier to play the game. Of course, all these knives have the same hitbox, so it's not going to be like one knife just works better in the game. I'm just saying that these knives are the easiest to use in the game. Now, going through some of the beginning knives, this red knife is one of the best Get for Apples knives of these 16 knives. So let's test it out for a second. Now, this one isn't exactly the best one. I'm not a big fan of the color. I feel like it's kind of hard to follow where the knife is at all times. And it could use a little bit wider of a hilt. So I'm not going to put that knife, nearly in the top 3 knives or the top 5 knives. But it's still one of the better ones that you can get near the beginning. And this wood knife, too, is also pretty good to use at the beginning, but of course, since it's brown, it really also doesn't stick out too well, so it does not deserve the top spot on this list. But it's also pretty good for some of your starting out knives before you start unlocking some of the better knives. Some of those boss knives are some good knives. And then let's move on to the next set of knives. So looking at all these scissors ones, they seem pretty great, but they're kind of wide, but I wouldn't use them because they don't have that handle. For some reason, the handle really helps when you're figuring out these knives. If I was going to say a couple of the knives, the top 2 knives in this category, I would say it's this knife. So let's test this knife out. I don't like how wide the tip of the knife is for this one, but the handle is definitely really good for being able to figure out just how far away your knives are without ruining it, having the knives run into each other. It's just really good for being able to figure out how spaced out your knives are, and you're able to find a better spot to stick a knife, maybe in between a couple knives. Moving on, this purple knife is another great one. I like how the colors really stand out when you're playing the game, so you get a good idea of where all your knives are at all times. And it's got a reasonably sized hilt that works pretty darn well for being able to figure out the spacing of your knives, so you can find a good place to stick the knife when you have a bunch of knives in. All right. So moving on. Let's go on to the next section. Of course, these knives just seem to get better and better the more you go. So there's only one really good one in this Get for Apples category. A lot of them, they start doing like things where they're not symmetrical, where the point's like right not in the middle. But this is one of the better ones. Of course, since it's red, like a dark red, I don't really feel like it stands out super well. So, I mean, once again, it's not in the best category. We'll get to that in just a second. But it's still another really good one. I mean, it's hard to get really good knives in these games because they have so many different knives that just don't work out super well. So here's the boss knives category. There's actually a few good knives in this category. This one's pretty good. The donut one's pretty good. But let's go with the gear knife, because this is another one's the one that I like to play with. Before I got one of the better knives that I'm going to show you in just a minute, I did use this one quite a bit. I just like the way that it looks. You can know exactly where that point is because the tip is thin enough where you can see just how much space you have, but also the hilt kind of gives you a really good feeling of just how close you can fit different knives between blades. So it gives you a good starting point. Some of the other blades have a little more difficulty doing this, trying to fit the knives in between. Well, we already made it to 9. All right. Down to 10. Anyway. So let's move on to one of my favorites that I used for a while, the diamond blade. This is where I started thinking of just how good using the hilt was for this game. The diamond blade is definitely a great one. If you can finally unlock it, get to the high enough stage and find the diamond boss, then you can't go wrong using the diamond blade. The light blue sticks out pretty much on any of the bosses. You can always see where it's going, and I feel like it's pretty much made to be one of the best knives to use in the game. So I would put this one at number 3 for the best knives, and I'll show you why in just a second. I think there is 2 more knives that are better than this knife, and yeah, let's fail this next one, and we'll move on. All right, so for the second best knife in the game, that one goes to the fan. I don't know why, but it just seems like the fan is the perfect shape and standing out for being able to figure out where to fit a new knife in. And the way that the knife is made, you can really see just how wide. I feel like the blade is the perfect width for being able to play this game well. As soon as I unlocked, like if you go back to my fan video, as soon as I unlocked the fan knife, I immediately got to, I think, stage 50. Just in that same video, every time I get a knife, I just try to see how far I can get with the new knife. And pretty easily got through all the way to stage 50 using that knife, just because it is so good. Oh man, and the disco. Well, let's just skip this legendary knife. I'm not a big fan of that one. That one takes quite a bit of time to beat, which brings us to what I think is the best knife in Knife Hit, and that is the poker chip knife. I also think it's one of the hardest bosses in the game, so it's definitely hard to get this knife, but once you get it, I don't think you can go wrong with it. Just the fact that the blade, you can see the blade and it's really separated out from the hilt. The hilt has a good amount of width to it, so you know exactly where the blades are. And the heart, I think, is a great touch in the middle, because you can see exactly where the middle of the blade is, and that's not something that you can get with some of the other knives. So this is definitely one that I use the most. If you have unlocked this knife and you're not using this knife every single time that you're playing this game, then you are hurting yourself, because you're not going to get as far. Of course, all the knives have the same hitbox. If you play the game a little bit differently than I play, and you're not trying to look for the spaces to fit the knives in, then you can have a different experience. But yeah, let me know what you think your favorite knife is, or what the best knife is to use in the game. Like, these are definitely the easiest to use, and I would definitely give this one a shot before you start, commenting that there's a million other better knives in the game. Well, anyway, that's my top knives of Knife Hit. I am Abram SF. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Peace.